Well, we had a little bit of a challenge there getting on the broadcast, but we are here. So I was going to go a lot earlier today, and but it was just such a great news day. If you are tracking with the story, and I can't believe that Karl Rove is giving the dumb advice to the president that he should just drop the whole Mueller investigation and move on. You know what this reminds me of? Have you ever seen this scene in like Jason Bourne, where at the when they had the operation, was the Greenbrier or whatever it was, that they had the head of the intelligence agency, the CIA, who they were asking him about, the Senate's asking him, well, what about that operation? He said, well, we wrapped it up because it was an experimental program and we found it wasn't going to be practical. And so they said, well, let's ask about some other things. And he with such relief, he shoves the file aside and brings up a new file. And he opens up the subject because he didn't want to have his past exposed. That's what the news media is doing now. They're doing their rush to change the subject. So Nancy Pelosi puts out her talking points today, and of course Media Matters copies it. And every single talking head, it's kind of amazing. Do you ever see the edited versions of newscasting where they all say the same thing verbatim? It's flipping crazy because the entire media apparatus is actually a giant super PAC. It's a media super PAC working for the Democratic Party on their talking points. And so now we see the deception, the orchestrated bombardment 24 hours a day of the media against Trump on this whole narrative of him being guilty of collusion and then obstructing an investigation. Well, that chapter's done, and they can't wait to move on from here. Now, tonight, two things happened that were interesting. Comey is on the hot seat because the question is, since he was the key guy in office, remember, Brenner, CIA, Clapper with the National Security Agency, and the Department of Justice, McCabe. These guys are all like working together. This is going to come out. Comey, though, was the guy who was in office, the carryover into the new administration. And so he is the one who had to approve the use of the Russian dossier, the Steele dossier, as a instrument, as an indispensable part of the FISA warrants, so that they could do their spying work on Carter Page and Papadopoulos, etc. But what Trump said that was so interesting is, and he was so prophetic, always is. He's got an uncanny instinct on this stuff. I think these guys do have. Some of these guys have a gift in this sense in their arena of what isn't seen that they know is true. And he said, I believe I'm being spied on. I believe something's going on, because they were tapping in on his conversations. They were trying to get people embedded into his campaign. Now, Comey is the guy that's going to be the first big target that's going to begin to come into the unraveling. So Senator Lindsey Graham is pursuing this. Lindsey, when it's like McCabe was like a bad influence on him. It's like he came like a bad soul tie. He's come to his senses now that he's on his own. Now, Laura Ingraham is interviewing Lindsey Graham, and she's playing a section of a Comey because Comey's already, he knows what's coming. So let's hear what James says. Oh, can't do it. Well, I talked too long. All right. So here's what Comey says. He says, look, I've done thousands of hours of testimony. I'm totally ready to give whatever they want. Only this time it's going to be in the open, and everybody's going to be able to hear it because it's not going to be in secret. And so he's like making this braggadocious, innuendo that there's a whole lot of secret talk, but I'm going to bring this thing out in public. So he's going to go ahead and bring this out in public. Lindsey Graham goes ahead and says what it is that he is going to ask him when he comes before them to explain this. He's telling him ahead of time. He said he's going to want to know when Bruce Orr was briefing him about the dossier and turning it over to him. did he say anything that questioned the credibility of the document and its reliability? And the second question is going to be, how much thought did you give to this? How much consideration did you give? And, and those are the questions he's going to have to answer. So let's check that.
Handle this investigation or any other, let me know when you want me.
No, he's ready. Okay, so one is going to be in public, and I'm going to give you a heads up. But one of the questions I'm going to ask you, did Bruce Hoard tell you you shouldn't trust Christopher Steele? And how much time and attention did you put into verifying the dossier before you certified to the court that it was reliable? So there you go. Think about it. Come to the committee here soon, and you'll give me the answer in public. You will testify, my friend, in public, not behind closed doors, and you will answer for your time as FBI director.
Now, I want to get your take on another.
Wow. So this is like drama playing out. Big drama. This is going to be bigger than Watergate, providing it's exposed. And the president did an interview tonight with Sean Hannity. And I don't know if you got a chance to catch it, but there were some very important points that he made. He said that they mocked me when I said there was spying going on in my campaign. Well, spying proved to be, in his New York terminology, he said small potatoes compared to what was really going on. And he referred to these guys as being corrupt cops in the department. That ain't good. And he said, we're going to make sure this never happens again. That's an important statement. Make sure it never happens to another president. The coup, the coordination of the Department of Justice, the NSA, DOJ, FBI, CIA, in an effort to try to set up and take down a sitting president. So he said that lives have been ruined, and I hope they don't get away with it. It's interesting to say, I hope they don't get away with it. He said innocent people were hurt very badly. It's worse than a scam because it was at the highest levels. He knows what's happened. And he said, he was asked about pardons. He said, don't want to talk about them now. But Mike Flynn was the first name that came up. I can almost predict that Papadopoulos, that Mike Flynn particularly, is going to be one of the first guys that will get pardoned. But then, he went on, he says so many people were hurt because it was Papadopoulos, it was Carter Page, it was Mike Flynn. You've got Manafort destroyed. And who turns, and who is one of the guys that gives evidence? It was his partner, Podesta, who, you recognize the name Podesta? So Podesta was able to walk off because he gave a testimony about Manafort. And then Roger Stone, of course, is in there. And I think this is a good news for Roger, because I'm not sure what they're going to try to accuse him of. But basically, then Trump lists Comey. He wants McCabe. He wants Strzok and his paramour there, Lisa Page. And the thread is going to lead back to Brenner and Clapper. Clapper, remember, knew the moment that Comey had put the dossier in front of the president, that the president now was looking at this, that Comey could go back and say, President, I met with him. And so Clapper could brief CNN and say, now you can go public that the president has seen the dossier. All of that was set up. And then you got Brenner, who I believe helped facilitate Michael Steele with Fusion GPS and the handoff of that dossier to, of all things, John McCain's staff guy to get it over to the FBI. So, and you got, this knucklehead, Adam Schiff. The guys, look at this guy, man. He is really wired strange. And he is going to continue the investigation. That's going to go down like a rat sandwich at this time, because he wants to continue the investigation going through President Trump's banking records under the premise that he's going to look for collusion or for some espionage that's going on financially. But I think that's going to fall on some real rocky ground, and we'll see where that goes. But Trump went on and said, hey, Steve Deese and Judge Jeanine, I hope she's back at Fox. It's just funny. He watches media. He says, Rush, Mark Levine, and you at Fox, and you Hannity. He said, you guys have been great. And he said, by the way, I looked at the ratings last night on CNN and MSNBC, way down. And it's just, it is really a fascinating moment to be alive. Now, we prayed a year ago, and I was mocked by the trolls that watched this broadcast because they said that I was a false prophet because I said at the Feast of Purim last year that we prayed that God was going to expose the intelligence agency coup that has been working against the president and will turn this case over. Well, it was 1 year later, the Feast of Purim. Interesting enough, the president acknowledges Israel's right to the Golan Heights to protect themselves. Netanyahu comes back and says, and they so much should send us to Bill Maher, since he's such an illiterate Jewish historian over there, with what do you expect from a comedian anyway. But Bill Maher, who's making fun of me and others that had nailed that Cyrus analogy for Trump, what does Netanyahu do? He goes back the second time and says, Mr. President, the second time now you have proven to be a historic figure in the order of Cyrus and Lord Balfour with the Balfour Declaration, and you've proven to be the friend of Israel. He mentions Trump's legacy as a Cyrus the second time. I guarantee the idiots at HBR aren't going to quote that one. But what you got to know is that we are now seeing that unraveling. And of course, the rhino types are going to go, let's move on. Let's just get on with the president's agenda. Let me tell you something about Donald Trump. Donald Trump, it's amazing that he was able to accomplish the trade work, the growth in the economy, the ability to continue his prosecution against ISIS, the restoration of employment in the United States, the pulling out of the Paris, Accord on the environment, the amount of stuff he was able to do, including moving the embassy, while he was under the psychic duress and harassment of this sort of Damocles from this conspiracy in the intelligence, media, and he had Omarosa. He had nut jobs right there in his own office. You can't even trust them because they're holdovers from the bureaucratic, administrative state. I mean, they're not government elected. They're just hanging around, and so they're in his office, and he's got constant betrayal around him, and yet he still was able to keep. Everyone said he's like emotionally unstable. He's a liar. The truth is, what enormous self-composure he had to not talk about this, other than to say it's a witch hunt. It's a witch hunt. And I'll tell you what, we have to continue to pray that a veil comes off the mind of America. That's our battle, is against witchcraft. When you've got Media Matters, which is the organization that Soros funds, that does the 24-hour, 7-day-a-week assessment of everybody. I'm low on their radar screen, but look what they did. They went after Tucker Carlson. They went after Laura Ingraham. They went after Rush Limbaugh to shut them down and take them off the air. They were the reason why O'Reilly ended up getting off the air. What they do is they go back into your history to try to find anything you've ever said. My broadcasts on Periscope would be a hoot. Anything you've ever said that could be brought out and spun in such a way to make you sound unstable and such. So Glenn Beck was targeted by them constantly, and they go to your advertisers, and they go to them with whatever salacious soundbite they can find. This is they took out Imus, Don Imus. It was the first sacrificial lamb, and they do hit jobs by trolling and then finding something you've said and then blasting you on 20 different platforms that are all working with the left in media. And then they go to the advertisers to get the advertisers. Thank God I don't have to worry about advertisers. So that, nobody's going to be able to put me out of business from that. But I have been demonetized already by YouTube. And we asked them, well, what's the problem? And YouTube basically can't tell me what the problem is. So then tonight I'm looking at a Twitter, picture, some screenshots someone sends me saying that they're not able to access anything I'm putting on Twitter because it's deemed by Twitter as a sensitive matter, and they have to change their rating to be exposed to what? Am I doing, pole dancing here at night? What the heck's up with these people? Sensitive subject matter? All that I'm doing is covering the news. But this is like wild times, people. So I encourage you, that's right, get your popcorn ready, because this is going to be a very interesting process. Now, the Attorney General, Barr, who's a former Attorney General under the Bush administrations, this isn't a guy who's new to the job, and he's never had any adversaries and nothing negative said about him. But right now, of course, the left, Democrats are all saying, well, he's going to dismiss Trump. Mueller never should have given him the prerogative of deciding if there was a case. Well, if Mueller has no information and he has nothing he can prosecute him with, according to Ken Starr, all that he can do actually is just recommend that the Attorney General reviews it, because there's nothing that Mueller could find that was worth working with. And that's after 2 years with 400 FBI agents, 5,000 interviews, 20 prosecutions, and people's lives financially ruined and their families destroyed. And it was all for tangential stuff that they just tried to, they find something that they could, indict them on or lock them up with. And like I said, you've got guys right now, like Mike Flynn was set up. They set him up in order to take him down. And the guy's he's just a great guy. And so it's something which I don't want you and me to lose sight of. And in the name of Jesus, this isn't about politics. God help us, it's not about politics, because the Republican Party is got its own, swamp. It's about a day in America where we can work with this populist president to be able to support him, so that what's happening is that the deep state and the dysfunctional weaponizing of the intelligence communities, it's all being exposed, and God is allowing the anvil, which is Trump, to get hammered on, so that the sparks can produce an awakening and an enlightenment. And it has to happen with us. Listen, man, Christians are the people that got Trump in office. I was listening to David Horowitz today on an interview with Eric Pataxis, and he said it was Christians that got Trump elected. And yet Christians are nobody wants to take a stand. Christians don't want to speak up. Christians don't even want to defend themselves. And we have got to break this thing. I don't want to get sucked deeper into that battle, but I'm telling you, evangelical leaders who don't like the culture wars and don't want to get involved with politics, they have no idea that we're dealing with a powerful, organized, principality-driven takedown of the United States. It's happening through the academic arena. Right now, it doesn't matter whether you think the Green Plan is nonsense. They voted on it, nobody would even vote for it. The people that are programming the youth, millennials, and Generation Z coming out of college will vote for Beto O'Rourke. They'll vote for Ocasio-Cortez, because they have been propagandized and molded by the extreme progressive leftist movement, and the power brokers in media and the people that are funding the Soros machinery that is still at work in the Democracy Alliance and Media Matters, that are working on the immigration borders. These are all the activist groups. You think these are just American groups? They aren't. They're funded activists from central casting in order to create 100 points of disruption in America, so that this country essentially has to submit to a reduced role in the globe. And when that happens, my friends, then you've got your harbinger scenario, your end time scenario. But what if God has not allowed that to happen, because it is not the time for that to happen? There's a great line where Aragorn in the trilogy of the Lord of the Rings, where he says there may come a time when the hearts of men fail, and when evil is able to triumph over this earth. But this is not that time. That's the spirit we have to have, and we must rise up. Between now and 2020, it's going to heat up. It's going because those, I figured something out. The people that are at the top of these systems in the media and and frankly, it's in the Democratic Party and in the deep state Republican Party, that these people are actually, I don't think you're going to see them come to the light. There could be people that will, but the majority won't. And here's the reason why. Because the Apostle Paul said that there will come a time when people will believe the lie because they receive not the love of the truth. Now, this is the moment of truth. If people can look at the data from Mueller, and they can look at what he said, and look at the report, and still double down on destroying the president, and be frustrated because he isn't in collusion with Russia, if in the face of the truth, they do not love the truth, but would rather believe a lie, then they put themselves under the influence of a spirit. And therefore, that has to be, you have to block that. We have to see other leaders raised up that are going to be able to displace and challenge and nullify those that are tasked with the destruction of America, though they don't know it's the destruction of America. They think they're bringing in a more glorious age. Socialists by nature are under a religious delusion. They think they're bringing in utopia. They think they're bringing in a world where human nature, which is really not evil, but perfectible, if only society was changed. They're trying to create utopia. It's literally a false kingdom movement and a false utopian pursuit of the millennium. And it's interesting, as we come to the end of the ages, there's a whole generation that yearns for, the Bible says that Jesus is the desire of nations. They didn't even realize they're looking for justice. But then you saw what happened in Chicago. Then that couldn't have happened at a more interesting time with the Jesse Smollett case. And, what are we finding out about that? A complete travesty of justice. And that compounded with the Mueller report coming out and people doubling down on rejecting it, tells you that America is in a death struggle with people that will embrace truth and actually believe in justice, or whether it's going to be that period that Jesus talked about, where because of lawlessness abounding, the love of many will wax cold. See, if you see lawlessness succeeding, and if it's rubbed in your face, and you see it, and so many of us, 20 million of us, got involved with this election that have never been involved with elections before. And many of us that are people think, well, Lane's is off into the Trump thing. I'm not. I'm into the kingdom of God and the rise of sheep nations where religious liberty and the gospel is preserved, and goat nations which are going to be out to destroy, persecute, harass, and annihilate Christians. And so there have to be sheep nations because Jesus said when he returns they would be there. It's a new concept, but it's appropriate for this very hour. Now, having said that, you have to live your life, don't you? I have to live my life. We can't live it in the just the extended narrative of the battle over, the survival of America and the Trump administration and all that. We have to live it now, and I'm going to say something. This is very important for you to hear. God is moving. I believe that the decision of the president regarding Israel and the Golan Heights, actually, if you don't mind me saying it this way, it's going to drive some people crazy. But I believe that it was singularly providential in the timing that Trump made the decision when the Mueller report had to come out, because I believe that God is doing something. And Mike Pompeo, the Secretary of State, in an interview 4 days ago, was asked, do you think it's possible that Donald Trump could be, raised up by God? And he said, I believe if you look at the Bible and the story of Esther and look at that period where God raised up Esther at a time when what? Haman was trying to kill all of the Jews. That Donald Trump fits that description. You could say that. And this is the Secretary of State saying that Trump fits the typology of a biblical deliverer rising up for the sake of Israel and God's people. That's the Secretary of State. You didn't see that. By the way, you know what really is the sin? What is really the outrage of the last 2 years is real news. Real flippin' news is happening 24 hours a day. And stuff that's important that you need to know about, you're not hearing about. So, for instance, Russia has a lot of financial involvement with Venezuela. So does China. But Russia has, so they're in bed with Maduro. And, Putin, he can work with a dictator because, not a hard thing for him to do. And they have brought military personnel and assets into Venezuela to go underground as civilians, but they're actually doing hit jobs and mopping up the opposition against Maduro. And and Trump has information on Russia's military engagement. Do you know what ought to be on the top of the news feed? And nobody's talking about it. Today, Donald Trump said, Russia, get out. Now, my God, you've got two nuclear powers the size with the arsenals of Russia and the United States. And Russia is in Venezuela, and Donald Trump just delivered the message today, Russia, get out. He met with, I think, the wife of the elected president who isn't allowed to take office. And that's, folks, it is an absolute disgrace that the news is following its stupid, partisan talking points dictated to them by the pen of some sinister think tank that says, we're going to go talk about the president now is going to try to take away health care from people. No, he's going to try to keep the healthcare system from being bankrupt. By the way, third party, socialist and communist healthcare is miserable. You know why? Because the doctors aren't getting paid by you. The doctors are getting paid by insurance companies. And so if the hospitals and the doctors don't care about you, if they care about the insurances they're going to get compensated for, you have lost the quality of personal care right there by government design. So it's another subject. But this is I was just listening to Milton Friedman talk about this today on an old interview. But this is the news you and I are going to have to find that is actually the news. And thank God we're a prophetic community, that we're globally informing each other about what's really going on in the nations. But the hour is now for you to advance. Now's the time for you to be able to take ground. This isn't just a breakthrough that's happening over the White House. It's a breakthrough in the spirit. And in your life right now, doors are opening that were closed before. There's ground to take. There's new levels of seeing in the Spirit, hearing in the Spirit, moving in the gifts of the Spirit, moving in the supernatural, watching the businesses that you've been laboring over prospering, looking at the relationships. I'm talking about wayward sons and daughters are coming home now. Marriages that have been under assault are being healed right now. There is a grace extended, the scepter of Esther, which is the king extended that scepter, and whoever saw the scepter extended had access to the throne of the king. Well, that was what was extended to Esther in the Bible, and right now, the scepter of Esther is being extended to you. I'm going to be working with maybe about 150 or 200 of you in San Diego at Paradise Point. We picked the Paradise Point location in San Diego for the purpose of disclosing and discovering the breakthroughs that God is giving to the body of Christ and helping you craft the dream vision. You may have a dream for your life. I suggest that you release it and let God give you the dream. It's an extreme dream. God's dream is bigger than your dream. And some of the things you've been trying to do that haven't worked out, don't even worry about them, because God has a new chapter for you. So we're going to be meeting in San Diego. You can go to extremedreamtrip.com, extremedreamtrip.com. And I believe it's going to be in May, around the 20th or so. We're going to be spending 3 days or 4 days. And it's going to be an extraordinary time. I have Rabbi Laffer is going to be coming out, an Orthodox rabbi who wrote a best-selling book on Thou Shalt Prosper. The rabbi is going to break the keys of the Abrahamic blessing and the secrets of Jewish wealth creation, both in culture and in the home and in finances. And I'm right now talking. I think it's going to work out with Michael Jr., a great comedian, and I'm fascinated with his take on what he does in comedy. And because I do believe that we're going to have to, but after looking at Bill Maher and Steve Colbert and the meltdown of those knuckleheads in the secular media arena and their obsession with hating Donald Trump and Christians, John Oliver included, I'm really looking forward to watching how God raises up as I said 3 years ago, at some point, there's going to have to be an army that's going to be raised up, and it's going to be the activated army of the commentators and comedians that God's going to reach out to and activate, because humor, if you think about it, is a very Jewish thing. And from Seinfeld to Woody Allen to Mel Brooks to the origins with Lenny Bruce and Mort Saul, because Jews have to deal with irony. And so there's the gift of being able to find the funny is what keeps you sane in the battle. And so we're going to be focusing in on really finding and releasing the joy in this season, because there is new wine, there is joy. And the word the Lord gave me a couple of years ago was unleash the comedians. I remember I went into a meeting, I was with a couple of very depressed individuals. It wasn't that they were depressing, it's just that they were discussing the condition of things. And I had shown up late to the meeting, and I sat down and I said, Lance, what do you think? And out of my spirit, I said, unleash the comedians. And it was just, it kind of broke the energy there, because it was like, I thought, whoa, wonder what that means. Well, it means that comedians have been in the courts of kings. They were the court jester. And you know who the court jester was? The court jester was a protected personality within the court who had permission to say unpopular and unpleasant and politically incorrect things to the king if they were delivered in a comedic and satirical way. And so the court jester actually was the person who could deal with issues in a way that no one else could deal with. The only people that could do that, can't count on media to do that. They're telling the truth. But the political commentators we've got, whether it's Mark Levine or Hannity, the challenge we've got is they're so intense, and it's so, and we have to be able to find the humor, because really the left, Ocasio-Cortez, they actually are hilarious if you get it. So check out the extremedreamtrip.com, and we've got a limited space, but we're going to be in paradise with an Extreme Dream Trip group, and we're going to be crafting the strategy for the dream God has for you in this season of extraordinary breakthrough. And I'm going to catch you soon. I love you, you late night nocturnal people. Good night.
Hi, I'm Lance Wallnau, but you already know that. Did you know that you can subscribe, however? You just push that button right there or over there, and ding. Now we're connected. Look forward to seeing you soon.